Hey, fourth graders, we are on lesson one of our new module four, and this is going to be a great time of learning concepts that are going to help you further on in geometry in the future. There's a lot of hands-on that's going to happen with this lesson as well as this entire module. So make sure you have a paper available for scratch work as well as your protractor and ruler set. That way you can follow along when you do this problem set as well as apply it to your homework. So the first question asks, use the following direction to draw a figure in the box to the right. So do you remember when I said the read, draw, write method, RDW? Well, a lot of it's going to be emphasizing on the drawing part as we look at some of these new concepts related to spatial distances. Okay, so A, it says draw 2 points, A and B. So we want to define what a point is, and a point is just one dot, if you could think of it, in space. So space meaning around us, the air, outer space, anywhere in the universe, it's just a point. So there's 2 points we want to draw, and so we'll take our pencil and we'll just label one point, A, and another point, B. And with your straight edge or ruler, you could just connect a line between A and B, and there you go. So that's A and B, and that would be considered as a written concept of 2 points in space, okay? B, it says use a straight edge to draw AB. And let's look closely. It's using, notice that there is a little partial arrow above that line. So it's asking us to draw a segment of a line, or we call that a ray, or a Y. So we want to use a straight edge. In this case, we'll follow along with where we left off. And because we started at A here, and then we continue to B, but it's because it's continuing on, it has that arrow there. You could think of it, again, we could rewrite this as A, B with the arrow, and that's also acceptable way to write it. So that's considered a ray, okay? So we can draw that, and it would follow along and then continue like that. Okay, so essentially from A to B and then continuing on. And that means that line or ray AB is going to continue forever in that direction, and that means infinite. It won't stop. Okay? All right. Let's take a look at C. When C says draw a new point that is not on AB. Again, it has that little arrow there, so it's the ray AB, and label it C. So label it C, a new point that is not on AB. So let's go ahead and take our pencil and we'll just put C anywhere. I'll just choose a point right here, C, and I'll label it C. And now it says D, it says draw AC. Let's take a look. You notice there are no arrows on that line above AC. So that means, again, all it is a line. So we'll draw that line connecting from A to C. Okay? Now it says E says draw a point not on ray AB or the line AC. Call it D. So it's not on AB, ray AB, or on line AC. Okay, so let's just find another place to put a point. I guess I can just put it anywhere, right? So just put D here. And it says construct now on F a ray that says CD. So this is, now you'll see this actually has 2 arrows on there. So what does that mean? Well, that means that is a line that's infinite in both directions. So now we can do that. Where C and D, we'll go ahead and draw a line, and this one extends all the way from here to here, so let's go ahead and do that. C to D, and then passes through C, passes through D, and it's infinite. It means it continues on in both directions. Okay? And then G says use the points you've already labeled to name one angle. All right. Well, what is an angle? By definition, an angle is that measurement radially through from one line to the next. So we could say, and use my highlighter, it's between the ray AB and the line AC. So it has to be between this line portion and there. So I'm going to use a different color. Let's go ahead and make it vivid. And we're going to label that as an angle right there. So if we zoom in, do you see that? That distance between here and here is an angle. Okay? And if we want to label that angle, you can call it, and I'm going to show you some concept. It can be considered an angle with a name, angle. We'll start from one point. How about we'll start with B and point B to point A to point C, because we're trying to get that pink portion for there. So the angle, the proper nomenclature or naming of it, name convention would be to draw an angle symbol and then label it B, A, C, or you could label it as angle C, A, B. Those two are both acceptable because notice that the letter A is, the point A is between the letters B, A, and C here. And the same goes for if we go the opposite direction, that A is in between. And that's where this point A right here is the definition of where that, we call it vertex of the angle is. So the answer for that are those two. This one or this one are both correct. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and move on to number 2. And it says, use the following directions to draw a figure in the box to the right. Okay, so we're going to do a similar action with 2. It says, draw 2 points, A and B. Okay, let's try that again. So we'll draw 2 points, A and B, and label them. Always label your points so you have a clear point of reference. Then it says, use a straight edge to draw line segment AB. And how do we know that's line segment? Because there's just a single line representing a segment, a portion of a line, and it has AB in it. So again, I'm going to go ahead and connect those. That's where we're going, right? That's where we're heading. So let's connect those two. Okay, and then C, it says draw a new point that is not on AB, segment AB, label it C. Okay, so how is this different than the previous one? Not so much, but let's try putting C here. Okay, and then D says draw ray BC. Again, it's a ray. We identified that as a ray because there is this little half of an arrowhead on it. And the reason why it's half arrowhead, again, is it's an abbreviated form of an arrow. Writing BC with a ray, a complete arrow, is acceptable. Okay? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and draw BC as a ray. And that means we need to make sure it's a straight edge, and B to C. And because it's a ray, we know that it doesn't just stop there, does it? So let's do that again. Connecting. All right, and just to be clear, we know it passes through B, so we can make our point a little larger so it's correctly diagrammed. And then we know it's a ray, so we have to have an arrow down here pointing B to C in the direction from B to C. Very important. And then E, draw a new point that is not on AB or BC. So AB the line segment or BC the ray. Label it D. Okay, so a new point somewhere D. Let's give it a try. Let's put D over here. Okay, and then it says construct a line, and a line meaning what? It has indefinite or infinite length, so that's going in both directions forever. So AD, here's A on the bottom here, and then D is up there. So we're going to draw a line representation, and it goes past that, and then over there. And because it's going infinitely, we have two arrows on both sides. Okay? Now identify DAB. Okay. So angle DAB, we need to identify it. So that means call it out or label it by drawing an arc to indicate the position of the angle. Okay, so as we did before, we want to draw an arc on that angle. So DAB, that means it has to be passing, it has to be between D here and B, because A is that angle vertex. So let's go ahead and label that. There it is. And I want to show you a tip here is because it has a particular angle, we could give it a hash mark right there just so we see that that's going to be our identified angle. And then we'll go ahead and call it out. This is considered angle DAB. Okay, so that symbol right there is angle DAB. All right. Now H says identify another angle by referencing points that you have already drawn. Okay, do you see any other angles between these different points? And if you have a sharp eye, you're like, oh yeah, I do see a different angle. It's right here between A and C. So the vertex being B right here. That's the vertex. So I'm going to just call that out so you can see it's a vertex. And we'll go ahead and draw that angle. And because we're not sure if it's the same angle as DAB, we can't put one hash mark. We might want to put two hash marks in there just to say it's a different angle. Okay? So that angle we'll call, how about ABC? So angle ABC. We'll take a look at these different types of familiar figures. Familiar being that you probably have seen them before. There's a stick figure of maybe you can call that a house, or possibly for some of us in 3D printing, we say, oh, it looks like a robot head, possibly 2 eyes and a mouth with a little hat. And then there's a USB stick for memory stick. And then we see, lastly, a compass. So label some points on each figure. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and label some points. One way to know what a point might be is where do two lines meet or two line segments meet. So we could say, when to label maybe a few of them, we could call this maybe one point here could be A. Another point could be B. All right. Another point could be C. Right? And then there might be some other points on this USB or memory stick. Let's say that's one point right there. It would be D. And how about here would be E. Okay, so that one right there is E. We might have a few inside. There's different points in here. This could be F and G. And looking at this compass close up, well, there's a lot of points going on here, but what's most common here looks like to me, I see a lot of vertex points that if we look at 3 points, we know when you connect 3 points, it makes a triangle. So 3 points connected together in line segments would be triangles. So we could say this is A, B, and C. So if you could look closely, maybe I could use a different color here. That's A, that's B, and that's C. Okay? All right. So here comes the fun part. Use those points to label and name representations of each of the following in the table below. So we have rays, a line segment, and an angle in our table. So on the house, what might be considered a ray? Well, what's the definition of a ray? It has at least passing through 2 points, and then it continues in one direction infinitely. Okay, so we have to draw that. So let's use a different color. Okay, so with your straight edge or just following along, you could identify, well, it's possible that we can see that if we connect A and B right here, that would be 2 points passed through. And then if we continued on, that would be called an A, a ray, AB. So let's label that. That's ray AB. Okay. For the flash drive, memory stick, what might be considered a ray? Could be, for sake of simplicity, we could say from here to here and continuing on. So that would be FG. And then compass, rose, zooming in, we might say that could be BA. Okay, remember it does matter which direction that ray is pointing at, so we chose to go from B to A and then infinitely past point A. So BA. Okay, lines. Well, a line goes for ever in both directions. So let's change the color. Okay. And line could be, for the house, it could be start going through B and C. Right? So we can have that as a line. And then flash drive, how about, we'll double up on that and maybe say it's FG, and then instead both directions there again labeled, so FG, so overlapping. And then compass rose, we could say about AC. Okay. It really is your choice on how you want to call it out. It could have been CA. You could call it identified as CA with the infinite lines on both sides. But I like to many times go by the order of the alphabet if I know it's possible there. Okay. What's a line segment? For the house, what might be considered a line segment? Just looking at it, we could just see right away that a line segment might be just 2 points with a line in between them. So let's say that line segment could be here to here, and that would be AB, and there's just a line over it, right? The flash drive, that might as well be DE. And then compass rose, again zooming in. How about we try here to here? If you can see that. Let's try a brighter color so you can see that. Just from here to here. All right. So BC. And then angles. Okay, so I'm gonna do all three: house, flash drive, and compass. And then I'll just go ahead and label them after on our table. So I will look at one angle might be identified here between A, B, and C. So that's one. On the flash drive, let's say between D, E, and G, here, here, and here. If I were to extend a point, well, okay, that doesn't really qualify. So we're gonna have to create a new point on the flash drive. Let's call this a point right here. And let's call that H. Now we can go ahead and call it out. F, G, and H. Okay. And then lastly, so there's that angle. And then lastly, the compass. A lot going on here. Let's say there definitely is an angle between A, B, and C. So from here to here, if I were to redraw that, right, we have A here, B here, and C here from the compass. So that angle would be right here. Okay, let's go ahead and label them. So on the house, we know it's ABC. On the flash drive, we have FGH, angle FGH. And on the compass, we have angle CAB. All right. And then last it says extension. Do we need to do the extension problem? That's extra. Draw a familiar figure, label it with points, then identify raised lines, line segments, and angles as applicable. So you can come up with your own. I think I'm going to leave that to you guys to practice that in the homework set. But think of a figure that has vertex points or sharp points that connect. You notice on the flash drive, there's a lot of rounded edges which can get you confused. But if I were to draw something that has points, that would make it a lot easier to label. So I could have, I don't know, the Big Dipper or something like that. Constellation or something like that. And then I can connect all those points to make the Big Dipper, which is the stars in the sky. Okay? So I'll leave it to you to figure out how to label those. I give you options because many of you are very creative.